again, welcome back to a brand new video of the Targeted Individual Program, Targeted Individual Experience. So, today is October the 2nd, 2023. And been in the house all day. All right. Got a text this morning from the kid's mother saying that she is home today. So I didn't have to come over. So I was like, okay, great. Spend some time, relax. I wanted to do a video earlier on my other channel, but kind of got caught up into watching some videos. So I said, okay, let me do a quick video. All right. One of the videos I was watching, the person that was speaking, this person was doing a presentation, and he was talking about esoteric knowledge, right? Hidden knowledge. He mentioned certain books that were banned, and it's a pretty old video. He was giving a presentation. This is from like the 1990s. So he was talking about this book. This book is called The Book of the Master, or the Egyptian Doctrine of the Light Born of the Virgin Mother. So I know, you guys hear me rail against these religious fanatics because they're a big part of our targeting, right? They are recruited through the religious institutions, through the churches, and they are given this religious biblical mission in their mind, right? It's, again, it's just delusion. And because those that are in position of power understand the truth, they're what I call their sheeps don't, right? They've been taught lies and to believe in lies. And so anyone that comes along with the truth, it's funny because they claim to be believers of Jesus Christ, but they don't really believe Jesus Christ, right? They don't believe in the teaching of Jesus Christ, particularly if you're a Christian. They believe in the teaching of the so-called Apostle Paul, right? And again, all you have to do is go to church on a Sunday and listen to their sermon. Okay? They don't even know the teaching of Jesus Christ, because the gospel doesn't really give you a full grasp of the so-called Jesus Christ. Remember, there were other books that were written about the life of Jesus at the same time, or even earlier, or a little bit later. I shouldn't say a little bit later, but at the same time or earlier, prior to the so-called Christian Bible creation, right? So if you read the Gospel of Thomas, go and read the Gospel of Judas Iscariot, right? And, it's a totally different Jesus, right? I mean, some things are the same, but some things are a lot more are different, okay? So unless you understand these things, and again, the indoctrination within the religious system, whether it be the Christian Bible or Christianity or Islam, you really, again, you are just being indoctrinated, and you're not believing in something that you know. You believe in something that you don't know. This is why it's a belief system. Okay, it's not factual. It's not based. They may have some factual references, places, maybe certain people, but in terms of at that time, you know, there's really no evidence to say any of these so-called people existed. At least when it comes to Jesus and his 12 apostles. Okay, at least not in the sense in which the Christian Bible make it. All right, was written. Okay. So one of the books they said that he mentioned is a book called the Book of the Master, or the Egyptian Doctrine of the Light Born of the Virgin Mother. And this book was written by W. Marshall Adams it was published in 1898. All right, that's how old this book is. And you can actually find this book online. You can get the PDF version of it at usarchive.org. Okay, you can get the PDF version of it. But I want to show you guys something. I'm not going to do a long video in this because, again, but I know my perps and the detractors do watch my video. So, I'm going to let them know that, I'll continue to research and know the truth. Okay. You're not going to try to intimidate me, threaten me into not obtaining the truth, information, knowledge. Because this is ultimately what they don't want, right? Because the more you know and you know the truth, is the less they can control you, right? See, their control over us has to do with their criminal actions and their continued criminal acts, right? Because that's what they have to do in order to prevent us from speaking the truth, or try to prevent us from speaking the truth. All right, so this book, again, you guys can see it here. Now I want you to pay attention to this picture, okay? This is in Egypt, all right? And this temple, right, is called Temple of the Virgin Mother. But the Virgin Mother isn't Mary, okay? It is the goddess Hathor, okay? In Egyptian mythology, right, the baby Horus was born in a manger. And if you look at some of these pictures, paintings of baby Jesus in a manger, you will always see a cow there. Now, why is there always a cow there? See, because in Egyptian mythology, the goddess Hathor watched over the Christ, K-R-S-T, Haru. Haru is which they will take and create the Jesus story, right? The born of the Virgin Mary, that came from Kemetic mythology of Asar Aset and the baby Haru. All right, so I'm not going to go into a long story of telling you the exact mythological story, but I just do a quick summation. So the goddess Isis, her husband Asar was killed by his brother Set. Again, this is where you get the Canaanite Cain killed Abel's story from also, right? So when her husband didn't come back from his trip, she learned what has happened to him. And so she went out and she found the pieces of his body, which was cut up, cut Esau's body up into 14 pieces and spread it out throughout the land. Aset went to recover parts of his body, but there was one part that she couldn't recover, which was his phallus or his penis. So the story goes, she wanted to have a child, okay, to carry on the lineage and to also to have that child avenge his father. So she turned into a bird, okay, and rest on the body part of a dead husband, Esau, and she became impregnated, right? And she gave birth to the light of the world, which was her. So the whole concept of Jesus being the light of the world, that came from Kemetic mythology, or Kemetic spiritual belief system. Okay? So anyway, now that Set found out that I want to say Isis, that's the Greek word or name for a Set. So Set found out that a Set had a baby, and he wanted to kill the baby. So you see the whole story of Herod the Great finding out the baby Jesus was born, and he sent his soldiers to kill the baby. Right? Again, you got to understand where these stuff come from. The original. You will find it in Kemet. All right. So anyway, so she escaped with her child, and as the child grew up, he was trained in warfare and confronted his uncle, defeated him, okay, and took his rightful place on the throne. All right? On the right hand of his father. So, you guys see the similarities? Okay, there's a few books that were written in the 1700 that talks about this. One of the books you will find, actually you can get it for free now on Amazon, is called The Age of All Reasoning by Manly P. Hall. Okay? So, let's, let me go to the first chapter. Give me a sec, yeah. Okay. So chapter 1, Book of the Master, the Resurrection of Egypt. Numberless as are the changes and catastrophes of worldwide influence which have crowded this century of revolution, none is more startling or universal than its revelation of secrets and publication of that which has been sedulously hidden. It is not merely that the root gang rays of the press penetrate every corner of our lives and pierce through very pierce through well nigh every veil, that what is done at home today is tomorrow accurately known in the streets, that the council of statesmen are scarcely determined in confidence before they are published and discussed in every town and village. But the secrets also of this past have yielded themselves up, and we can plainly read the motive which our forefathers successfully concealed them from the men of their own generation. From the long forgotten archive of our great states papers, from Venice, from Genoa, from I know not where, light has poured in upon motive and transaction, buried in oblivion, not for decades, but for centuries. On every side, we have been deluged with private letters, private memoirs, private dispatches on affairs of state, private reports from ambassadors and confidential agents, private instructions from ministers and monarchs, documents of every kind, never intended but for the eyes of the person addressed, until curiously has become an extinct sentiment, and it is almost impossible to realize that not so long ago, the most cherished of all our personal privileges was privacy. Nay, the tomb itself has burst open its hiding places, and civilization, which perished thousands of years ago, have unrolled themselves before our eyes. We may thread the streets of Pompeii, which had already been hidden from mortal eyes for 150 years, when the father of the first General Council met at Nicaea to define the Christian faith. So go look up the Council of Nicaea at 325 AD. This is where the Roman bishops, the Roman Emperor Constantine and his bishops decided that they were going to create a new religion that they call Christianity. And this is where they started. And to many other numerical councils, they have met, had discussions, disputes, disagreements, but also agreements on who is the mother of God, whether Jesus' birth was that of an immaculate conception or one of man, who were the disciples, what were their names, right? We also had the creation of the Catholic Eucharist. We also had prayers, the creation of prayers, like I believe in God the Father Almighty and such, was in 325 AD. Okay? So you must understand, if you claim to be a Christian and you think that the Bible is the true word of God, then go and do your research. All right? Take a year to research this stuff. And at the end of this year, if you can still believe that, then continue being a Christian. But you will have more information to understand where your belief comes from. Okay? So, we may gaze upon the gems that went down into the tomb of McKinney with the ill-fated house of Atreus. we may consult in the heart of London the very tables which made up the famous library of the Assyrian Assar Benapal. Alike in space and time, the ends of the earth have come upon this generation, as the distance upon our globe have shrunk until we hold daily and familiar intercourse with the farthest corners of the world. So the chasms of the ages have been bridged across by the newly open roads of the past. Amid all this busy scene of revival and revelation, the resurrection of primeval Egypt stands out with particular eminence. For more than 1,000 years from the day when the barbarous Omar entered the capital of the ancient kingdom. Let me just pause here. So again, if you don't know history, you had these religious wars, particularly between the Christians and the Muslims. The Muslims, I shouldn't say the Muslim, but the Arabs won, because at the time there were no Muslims, right? They were Arabs, and most of the Arabs were actually Christians, right? So they were driven out of northern Africa, right? That's the Europeans, okay? With the invasion of the Arabs, which conquered Egypt and basically cut off North Africa from Europe, right? I know you guys have heard about the Moors, who went into Spain and in the 7th century and ruled southern Europe for 700 years. And it was in the 14th century that the Moors were driven out of southern Europe back into northern Africa. Okay? So that's just to let you know. Then it took another 200 years before the Europeans were able to go back into northern Africa. And so at this period in time, right, the Europeans were being reintroduced with North Africa, particularly Egypt. But by that time, because the Arabs didn't care about the culture because it wasn't theirs. So it's interesting that you see them today claiming that Egyptian culture is their culture. But when they conquered Egypt, they never preserved the culture. It wasn't until the Europeans went back into Egypt and start to take the artifacts and put them in their museum that the Arabs decided that, you know what, we can make money off of black culture. And so up until this day, they will claim that Egypt is, the ancient Egyptians were of Arab or so-called Mediterranean, but they're not. But you can go to other places in Africa, Sudan, Nigeria, Kenya, the Congo, and you can go to Egypt, look at the meta-nature, what they call the hieroglyphics and the pictorial language, and you can see the paintings. And you go to other parts of Africa where it's predominantly black, and you will see black people, same hairstyle, same cultural dressing, same instruments. They have kept their culture. But we have to understand how they were driven out of Egypt. All right? Not all, but most of them left Egypt because of the war between the Christians and the Arabs. Okay? Remember, Arabs only claim Egypt as theirs because they can make money off of the our ancestors. Okay, it would be like if the Moors, you know, started to dig up the graves of the Spanish kings and queens or the Italian uh, Roman emperors and put them in museums and made profit off of it. They never did that. But that's what Europeans and Arabs have done to African culture, right? Basically, they're grave robbers, but they glorify it and glamorize it. But basically, what they are is grave robbers, right? You can't come in America and go to Grant's tomb and decide that you're gonna remove General Grant's body and put it in the museum. You can't do that. But anything that has to do with African people, you know, they will find a reason, an excuse. They will lie to diminish the cultural importance of African people so they can continue to profit off of us, whether it be our dead ancestors or those of us alive today. Okay? So, all right, let's continue. For more than 1,000 years from the day when the barbarous Amar entered the capital of the ancient kingdom and the funeral rites of the classic learning was celebrated in the flames of the great library at Alexandria, to the day when Champollion, like another serious herald, the dawn of the new era of Egyptian brilliance, the ever-growing obscurity buried the entire land. Less than a century has elapsed since the most appalling penalties in the world and the next were fulminated by the Sultan against the official who would dare to allow a Christian to approach the sacred port of Suez, the starting point of the Holy Jar. Today, that port is the crowded entrance of the most cosmopolitan highway on the globe. For centuries past, Egypt, as it was the earliest, so it was the most jealously guarded seat of Muslim law. Today, its courts recognize a multiplex jurisdiction of alien nation for which no precedent exists in the history of any other state. Within living memory, its hieroglyphs were an enigma hopelessly abandoned. And listen to what he said now. Okay? They did not care about preserving the temples, the hieroglyphs, or the Medu Neter. They didn't care. It was only until Europeans started to, and remember, without African culture, you would have no museums. You would have no museums. The vast majority of artifacts that are in a museum around the world were stolen from Africa. Okay? So, all right. I'm just want to give you guys just an insight, and I want to, again, we're going to go to chapter 1. Let's see. Oh no, here you go. I'm sorry. Oh, chapter 2. Yeah, chapter 1, chapter 2. The religion of light. To whatever quarter of the globe we may turn our attention, tracing out the earliest records of the inhabitants, there is no community literally from China to Peru, to Sir H. Main has observed over the customs and constitution, of which religion has not exercised a potent and permanent influence. But the country where, listen to this, but the country where beyond all others the principle prevailed in its fullest and most creative force was undoubtedly the land of Egypt. Highly complex in its structure and regulated in its every detail by the strictest observance of custom, the constitution of Egyptian society presents, nevertheless, a very clear appearance if we regard the nation as a patriarchal family founded on the hierarchical basis and organically settled throughout the country upon a system dictated by religion. The whole line was divided into the same number of provinces, or nomes as they are somewhat effectively called after the Greek fashion, as the divine spirits who, according to the Egyptian creed, compose the tribunal by which the dead were judged. In each province, the capital was a sacred city, being the territory attached to a great temple, which itself constituted the enclosure around a shrine of the deity. To every temple, a distinctive priesthood was assigned, the member of which could not enter the priesthood of another district, while the monarch, though practically obtaining his throne by descent, again, this is where you have let me put it like this, before Europe had kings and queens, the concept of passing down the kingship or the queenship through the royal bloodline came from Kemet, not Egypt. Okay, Kemet. And there's a difference. Kemet became Egypt when Alexander the Greek, not the Great, the Greek, conquered Kemet and renamed Kemet Egypt. Okay? But the concept of rulership, even rulership by divinity, came from Kemet. All right? So, here you go. While the monarch, though practically obtaining his throne by descent, appears to have undergone a form of election and to have been consecrated to his office by the high priest of the patriarchal province. So, for example, when you had the crowning of a king, you have the coordination, which is done within the church, in which the Catholic bishop, okay, because remember now, in order to rule, it has to be by divine right. And the bishops or the priests or the emissary of God, what they would call, what Europeans call God, but in Kemetic spirituality, it is Neter, or nature. Nature is the divine creator, right? Nature is feminine and masculine. Okay? For example, the god Ra. It's not really an invisible god. Ra is the sun. You can look up and see the sun. The sun, without the sun, there would be no life on earth. This is why whenever you see a picture of the Roman version of Heru, which is Jesus, there's a sun disk behind his head. The very first Bible was called the Helios Biblios. It's called the Sun Worship Book. Not making this up. Okay? So, nor were the temples alone dedicated to sacred things, but the structures of daily life shared the divine significance. And for every division of the country, as the Rouge has shown, the palace and the canal, no less than the temple and the district, bore a name of mystery and reflect a region of the holy dead. Most characteristics of all was the omnipotent and all-dominating sense of the fatherhood of God, producing a familiar and in some respect even joyous aspect which the Egyptian imparted to the idea of death, ever regarding our present existence only as an antechamber of one to come, and our occupation in this life as a foretaste and counterpart of the life beyond the tomb. See, the Christian religion and the Abrahamic religion are just a pretty bad interpretation of Kemetic spiritual system, right? So the idea of life after death didn't start in Europe, it didn't start with the Arabs, okay, or Asia. It started in Kemet. In Kemet, the idea of an afterlife was part of their mythological belief system. Okay? And, they had no issue with understanding that it was mythology. But it was mythology created to represent aspects of life, aspects within you as a man or a woman. All right? So when they say Egyptian gods, the Egyptian didn't see their physical or pictorial representation of certain aspect within the human body, the human mind, within nature, right? So they use animals and humans in their picture to represent those things. Okay? So, and here you see Osiris. Again, that's the Greek name. The Kemetic name is Asa. And here in his hand, you see his rod and his staff. Right? So, again, in the Christian faith, they talk about thy rod and thy staff. This is where it comes from. All right? And you see the sun disk above her, with the Greek called Horus. He is the Christ. Okay? The anointed one. All right? That's all Christ means. The word Christ, as the Europeans, the Hebrews define it as being someone of, let's say Jesus was the Son of God. No, in the Kemetic spiritual system, we all can be Christ, man and woman, because Christ wasn't the name of a person born from an ancestral act, right, with a young girl. It is your consciousness. Okay? And when you reach that higher level of consciousness, you are anointed. Right? And also the priests, I should say, and priestess were considered to be anointed. They were also called Christ. Right? Because they were anointed. They were the only one that knew the sacred language, that understand the divinity between the king and the relationship, the rule by divine right, as stated in their mythological belief system, right? That, the king on earth was the representation of Ra, the sun. Okay? So every king was considered a Christ, as he or she, a king or queen, I should say, or he or she, ruled by divinity, by divine right given by Ra, or Amun Ra. Okay, so where was I here? So ever regarded our present existence only as an antechamber of one to come, and our occupation in this life as a foretaste and counterpart of a life beyond the tomb. Hence, in theory, as Mepere informed us, every Egyptian had a right to an eternal mansion. Now, in the Christian belief, you hear Jesus said, in my Father's house there are many mansions. Okay? Understand where this stuff comes from. And when the Christian apostle wrote that we have a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens, he only gave expression to the same image as the Egyptian priests when they spoke of the eternal house which the divine Horus built for his father Osiris. All right? For the same reason, the ancestor of a family never withdrew his presence. Hence, temples were palaces and palaces were temples. And the greatest work which the greatest sovereign could achieve was to build for himself an imperishable tomb. But through the influence of their religion was spread thus widely, and through the ranks of the priesthood appeared to have been open to all who could endure the training. The inner doctrine were not taught publicly, nor expressed in plain and definite language. On the contrary, they were carefully hidden from the uninitiated and were conveyed in terms of studied obscurity and by means of illustration, which themselves could not be understood without previous instructions. So again, the priests were also called Christ because they were anointed. They had the esoteric knowledge. They learned it. Okay? To the sense, indeed, which the priests at least possess, both of the divine personality and of their own ultimate union with the personal deity, far more probable than to any artificial pretension to the supposed exclusiveness may be ascribed the mystery enshrouding their religion. For mystery is to God only what privacy is to man, of a sense of which deepens with deepening intimacy. And through 300 years of continuous wrangling over the sacred truth, which most profoundly affect the heart and the minds have gone far to coarsen and deaden our spiritual sense. The soul still resents as the most unpardonable offense the profanation of a vulgar touch. For whether we acknowledge it or not, the springs of our entire existence are hidden, and the darkness of the womb in the darkness of the tomb, the source of our every action, is veiled from us. Mystery is the beginning, mystery is the ending, mystery is the whole body of our life. We cannot breathe, nor sleep, nor eat, far less think or speak without exercising powers which to us are inconceivable by means of processes which to us are inscrutable. Who is so ignorant as not to know these things? Who so learned as to make them clear? Of the various forms and symbols in which the priests enwrap the mystery of Egypt, there is one class which could once conceal and reveal the secret wisdom as which a radiant veil. No ordinary image, it is clear, no mineral, no plant, no animal, though they may shadow forth particularly in particular attributes or actions of the deity, could suffice to convey the full expression of the relation between God and man. Only the orbs of heaven, obeying in which lustrous course the laws which know no change, could adequately express the living energy, the illuminative power, and above all, the illuminative endurance of the divine attributes, a form of imaginary which suggests itself with great facilities of the mind of Egypt, bathed in the cloudless and translucent atmosphere with all the unflattering mechanism of sun, moon, and stars perpetually open before them. The priestly astronomers of that country are the mystery teachers of the heaven, as they were officially called, pictured the invisible glory of the unseen creation to be reflected in a sense of luminous orb of our own planet amidst the firmament. Now, if you go and you read the Gospel of Judas Macarius, where Judas spent some time talking with Jesus, and Jesus told him about the mystery of the universe. You guys, this is a very fascinating read. And he talks about the God Jehovah, that the who is worshipped today, is that he has no relation to this God. And this God was a murderous, jealous God. Okay? You guys really need to go and read that. All right? So it's pretty eye-opening. And Jesus said that he is of no relation to this Jehovah. All right? To this, the name is El. Okay? And we know that El became the Hebrew God, El Holim. I think I'm saying that right. Elohim, right? So, yeah. Okay. As the firmament itself, with all its radiant beauty, is reflected in the clear water of our own familiar river, and hence it is that in their sacred writing we find listen to this now, every religious idea to be conveyed by some astronomical analog, while with each astronomical conception and conjunction, there appears to correspond some manifestation of the deity. Right? So, example, 12 disciples, you'll see certain numbers repeated over and over in the Bible, right? And 12, that's the 12 zodiac sign, I think, or the 12 constellation. All right. So, the Bible have hidden knowledge, but it's not what you think. Okay? And again, you need to understand these things. So, a beautiful illusion, for example, is made in the Egyptian ritual to the illuminative action of the sun as the earth, the vessel of God, performs her daily rotation and annual circuit around the heavens. For we read there how the holy departed has appeared in full splendor in the vessel of Ra, and how thought the divine wisdom clothes the spirit with of the justified 1,000,000 times in a garment of true linen, of that substance, that is to say, which by its purity and brilliancy remind us of the mantle woven out of rays of light, wherewith the sun enwraps the earth afresh each day she rotates before him, just as the soul of a man is invested with new radiance each time that he turns to the presence of his Creator. From their profound theophacy, each phenomenon of nature conveyed to them a corresponding manifestation of the divine personality, and according to the ritual, it was the deity indwelling in the souls which confer upon the man the power of perceiving these relations. I am perception, we read. The imperishable soul. In the noonday glow of the sun, they beheld the splendor of Ra in his setting, the death of Osiris. In the new dawn, again, the idea of resurrection. So when the sun set, that is when Osiris, the battle between Osiris and Set takes place. And we know Set kills Osiris, so the moon comes out. But the next day, the sun becomes anew. The sun is reborn, right? Osiris becomes resurrected as his resurrection as the incarnated Horus. Again, I am the Father, and the Son is me. Same thing, Jesus and God being the Son and the Father is the same as Horus and Osiris, or Heru and Asa. Asa being the Father, Horus being the Son. They're one and the same. So this is where the Catholic bishops and Emperor Constantine, after being in Egypt, learning the sacred language, the sacred mystery system, created this version, and they took from other cultural religious belief system as well. That will be within the Old Testament. For example, if you read the Assyrian text, the Epic of Gilgamesh, you have a flood story that the Christian Bible literally copied almost word for word. Okay? Go read it. You can find it online. It's called the Epic of Gilgamesh, the flood story. Right? To the point where, a raven is released, but in the Christian Bible, it's a dove. Right? I mean, go read it. And that is at least 1,000 years before the the Old Testament or the Torah or the Pentateuch, the 5 books of Moses, flood story in Genesis. All right, so where was I? So in the glowing fire, the Creator Spirit Ptah, okay, in the harmonious proportion of the universe, the eternal wisdom, thought, the mind and will of God, in the starry firmament, crowned by Alcyone, and they can pronounce that, Pleiades, the sacred bull, and attended cow. Now, if you guys watch the movie with Charlton Heston where he played Moses, and they talk about, the Hebrew after they left Egypt, that they build this golden calf, right? Or the sacred bull. That's Hathor. Okay? And you will also find that early Arabs also worship Hathor. And they also worship another female deity named Alat, which later became Allah. Right? Some deep stuff, man. I'm not an expert on this stuff, but I've learned enough to remember some of this stuff, and it's very fascinating. But you see how Kemetic spiritual system, right, basically went out into the world, and those cultures, those people that took those early Kemetic belief system, created their own version where they settle, and from generations to generation the story changes, but it's very similar. There's a book called The 25 Crucified Savior, right? And if you go and read that, you'll be shocked of how similar those stories are. Okay? All right, so let's go here. So the ineffable beauty of Hathor, the living tabernacle of the sacred light. Thus, in the religion of ancient Egypt, the deepest and the most fascinating mystery of antiquity, the visible creation was conceived as the counterpart of the unseen world, and the substance consisted not of a mere vague belief in a life beyond the grave, but in tracting out the Ptah whereby the just, when the portal of the tomb is lifted up, passes through the successive stage of initiation, of illumination, and of perfection. Right? So this whole concept of Jesus being the symbol of perfection, like I said, this is, just do your research. Okay? Necessary to fit him for an endless union with light. The great creator, that Ptah it was. And again, the Kemetic origin of creation, the god Ptah, who came into consciousness with the utterance of the word, So in the Christian Bible, particularly the Old Testament Genesis, when God spoke the word came into existence. They get this stuff from the Kemetic spiritual system, or the Kemetic mystery system. Okay? But you would not even know this, right? If no one told you the truth. All right? So, necessary to fit him for an endless union with the light, the great creator that Ptah it was, through the secret places of the universe, which appear to have been the subject of the secret mysteries which were communicated to the postulate according to the Egyptian tradition by the master of the secret scroll. In the secret chamber of the house which bore the mystic title of the light. And in order to follow his instruction, we must commence by raising our eyes to the heaven around us and understanding how our earthly spirit is itself a member of the starry host. Okay? And so I just wanted to read this chapter because, again, I'm all about the truth. Okay? And you have to combat ignorance with the truth, particularly when you've been indoctrinated in a religion that is based on lies, that is based on contradiction, that is based on hypocrisy, because there are those in power, or those who had refused to give up power, so they took power in another form, which is what Constantine did, because Rome was on the decline, and he realized that. Very, very smart guy, okay? And so, being that Christianity at the time, all right, and it wasn't even called Christianity, okay? You had the Egyptian Greco god Serapis. And again, this is where the concept, right, of the blue-eyed, blonde hair savior came from, right? And so the followers of Serapis, were called Christians, right? Because Serapis was called, it wasn't called Serapis Christ, but it was called Serapis the Christ, meaning that Serapis the anointed one. So Constantine was very brilliant. Okay, he saw that Rome militarily was on the decline, so he have to shift his power, his control, so Rome would survive. And they did it through religion, the creation of Christianity. Okay? And remember, this didn't take 100 or 200 years. Okay? This was almost 1,000 years of going back and forth within the next pope and bishops to finally get to a point where they had completed their lie in the form of, what we now, what most Christians use today, that they read from, which is the Christian Bible. All right. But again, just want to do a different video other than my target, and just to be a little bit more informative, educational. And again, these are very rare books that you can find online. And like I said, get this book. You can get it at usarchive.org. Okay. It's called The Book of the Master. And also you can go to Amazon and you can get the book, The Reason for All the Ages by Manly P. Hall. Okay? So, with that being said, I will speak to you guys on the next Target Individual program, Target Individual Experience.